Can hit the button because the intro is brief on this one because we don't have 4 sponsors, 5 sponsors, however many. We just got Fulvius Apparel. We're back for episode 4 of ArachNerds, which is brought to you by Fulvius Apparel, fulviusapparel.com. Shop around, new stuff being added regularly. Use the code THN at checkout. Get 15% off your order. That is the exclusive promo code for THN listeners and viewers like you. This week, we're going to be kind of doing an interesting, I won't necessarily say comparison, but sort of a compare and contrast of sorts. We're joined by some guy named Phil Wolf. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of him.
Hello.
Phil keeps, if you listen to Snakes and Stogies, Phil keeps a lot of venomous, but he's also kept a lot of desert scorpions and other things in the past. So we figured we'd kind of talk a little bit about the trials and tribulations of both and the similarities in terms of working with, which I guess that is a hard comparison, but working with the more toxic species of scorpions, the medically significant stuff. He's dealt with a lot of imports and stuff as well over the years. So we figured we'd kind of dive into some Andronchus and the Urus and other goodies, Parabuthus. So
yeah. I'm really curious to hear how his keeping has changed from keeping, if he kept venomous snakes first and he went in with that kind of mindset with scorpions or vice versa. I'm really excited for this episode.
Well, thank you very much for having me on the show, guys. I really appreciate it. I love this stuff, and I love both of you, and this is wonderful.
Well, we both have a strong affinity for Andronchus and some of those really, really hot desert stuff. So,
hell yeah, man!
It's a good time to talk about them a little bit and
for sure
get into it. But I don't think that we've really ever talked about on Snakes and Stogies or THP when you were helping out there, sort of like you getting into inverts and things like that. Like how did that come about? What was the catalyst for scorpions? And
so I always liked scorpions. I thought scorpions were cool as hell. Terrified of spiders as a kid. Like the tinier, the scarier. You know what I mean? Like the tarantula, like you saw someone on TV or at some pet shop and they had a tarantula and you're like, okay, cool. It's big and hairy. Like it's not going to eat me. All right. I get it. But like the little tiny one in your garden, terrifying. But when I was a kid, I grew up on a farm in New Jersey and there was no scorpions. It was just too cold. And I mean, there actually may be species. I have no idea. I've actually never looked at it. But moving down to Florida, which I've been here since 2000, we do have species of scorpions and people talked about them, but it wasn't anything to be afraid of, but I was interested. And when I started working at, when I started working at Underground Reptiles, this would have been 2005, maybe like 2006 ish. They had all kinds of stuff. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And there was a guy that worked there. He actually still works for the wholesale side of it. His name is Pete Katz. He's probably not going to listen to this, but Pete, if you do, I love you, brother. And he is an old school bug guy. And it didn't matter what it was. If it was beetles, if it was tarantulas or centipedes or any kind of invert, he was addicted. And he knew a ton of stuff, how to keep them, how to breed them, where to get them, how to take care of them, all that stuff. And at the time, he wasn't working for Underground. He was kind of like flip-flopping between a couple different pet stores. And I went up linking up with him at a shop down south of Miami. And I bought my first 4 scorpions from him, which was Androctonus bicolor, Androctonus australis, Liaris conquestratus, and Parabuthus liasoma. And I think I paid like $100 for all 4, something like that. And
wild.
And they were all imports that he had cherry picked from, I believe, Strictly Reptiles, raised up for a few months. And I mean, the guy had hundreds and hundreds of bugs. And this was just like holdbacks. And he's like, oh, you know what? I want to move some stuff. Are you interested? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And actually, right around this time is when I started doing venomous training on my own to get my own hours. So I felt like it kind of coincided. And he also kept venomous. He had a handful of things. And he's like, look, you apply the things you're learning with snakes, only now you're doing it in a deli cup.
Mm-hmm.
So the same way that you wouldn't just reach in a cage with a cobra and pick it up, you'd use the appropriate tools. You're not going to reach in and pick up this, Tunisian thick-tail scorpion by the tail. Like, you're just like, don't do that. You're going to get hurt. Excuse me. And it snowballed from there. And I got more and more, and then I worked for Strictly, and that was a bad idea, because every single bug shipment that came out of Africa, I was cracking that crate open and opening film canisters and pill bottles, and because we would get a crate from Mozambique, and it would just say troglodytes on top. I'd be like, what troglodytes? What is that? And they're referring to heterogeneous troglodytes, the flat rock scorpions, and there would be, I don't know, 1,000 black film canisters. Like, you'd keep your Fuji film rolled in, and each one of those film canisters had a giant scorpion stuffed in there. And one of my jobs would be to crack it open and dump it out into a smaller deli cup with some soil and set them all up and give them, hydrate them to the best of our ability. We'd spray a little water in there and go to the next one. So I got to cherry pick a lot of really cool stuff that way. And it just started snowballing, and I've kept a handful of tarantulas and a handful of centipedes, but I've always gravitated towards the scorpions, man. They're just near and dear to my heart. So I don't know if that was a funky story, if I answered the question or not, but that's basically how I got into it.
Oh, that's really cool, man. I mean, you must have seen some amazing things, especially coming in on imports. I can imagine, especially with on the tarantula side of things, we get species that we're ordering species, specific ones, but we don't always get the ones that. So that must have been cool. Like, just like going through like you think you have one species and it could have been a new species or did you notice like differences between um some of the animals you were unpacking, especially in the film, when you're unpacking those dozens or hundreds of them? Like, did you notice like, oh, this one looks a little bit different, or this one may not be the species they said? And did you like kind of choose those ones too to kind of hang on to kind of look into more?
Yeah, absolutely. And what's cool is when we worked in the wholesale aspect, whether it be underground or Strictly or some of the smaller private importers, you'd be friends with your coworkers, and they'd be like, oh, Phil likes these. This one's funky looking. I'll put it aside for him. He works tomorrow, So it was really cool in that regard. My buddy Chris, he was big into tarantulas. I worked the venomous room at Strictly. He worked the boa and python room. And if either one of us was helping somebody do a bug shipment of some kind, because there's so many containers to go through, because it's just a lot of bugs, man. I would see something, I'd be like, oh wow, look at this zebra leg. It looks funky, man. It's got like a weird color to it. I'll put that aside for Chris. And he would do the same thing. Oh man, this Deathstalker's got like a marbly, like a calico marbly flecking to it. I'll put that aside for Phil. And some of the stuff, it was probably a morph of some kind, or it was probably a subspecies that is described now. Because crap, this was over almost 20 years ago, if not over 20 years ago. And a lot of the stuff that was bizarre wound up molting out looking normal. And it would be really cool when you get a Tunisian thick-tail, Androctonus australis, and it had like a faded appearance to it. It didn't have the stark black segment on the end of the tail. We'll call it a tail for all intents and purposes. Or it didn't have very dark pigmentation to the pincers at all, or the chelicerae were kind of pale looking, and it would molt, and it would be jet black with this crimson red on the claws, and like it's just an exceptional specimen, but you would have never known had it not molted. You know what I mean? Like it, and I'm glad some of the stuff you're like, I think if that one molts, it's going to be a really good looking animal. And some of them, they already hit adulthood and they're not going to molt. So it was interesting to see how things turned out. You also got every once in a while the wrong bug. So in a shipment of 200 androctonous emerexi, the Egyptian green scorpions, you'd have like 5 deathstalkers thrown in
Yeah.
because they looked similar and they were just there. Um, that is actually how I had one a Hottentotta judaicus, and that's one of my all-time. We were just talking about it recently, and I was going through old photos and just bringing back fond memories of that bug. And I mean, this is a matte black scorpion, just matte black with the standard Hottentotta physiology, but it postured and it patrolled, it hunted like a deathstalker. It was just an incredible animal to observe, especially when it was hungry and was going after food. And it came in with, I don't know, 500 androctonous crucicautta.
Well,
So we would get a shipment of 500 crucicautta, and it's actually that guy Pete that I was telling you about. He was like, "Oh my gosh, this is different. I got to show this to Phil." And I was like, "Dude, that's Judaicus." And he's like, "You know what? I was thinking that." And we wound up smushing it inside of a very thin deli cup so we could take real good pictures of the belly. And we basically determined that that's what it was. Just by cross-referencing photos at the time. I mean, this was, I don't know, 2010, 2011. Us using our LG flip phones to do this. It wasn't the best camera phones back then, but we had a lot of fun doing it. So yeah, we did see some funky stuff, some cool stuff, but a lot of times it was, we didn't know that it was a new species, or we didn't know that it was going to become a new species. And most of the stuff, it wasn't morphs per se. It was just, it was dirty, or that region that it came from had a different color rock. So when you went to mist it, if it got a little wet, it would show through the prettier colors, things of that sort.
was a lot of that stuff when it came in all like very similar in size, or especially with like the bicolor and other androgynous and stuff? Was it all like adults, or did you get some younger?
Oh no, it was
stuff
all
too?
different. All different. I mean, very rarely would you get super tiny stuff because
They're
it's
probably not finding
harder.
as
Well,
often.
they do find them, but and I don't know if this is a cultural thing overseas in North Africa or the Middle East, but maybe it's just an import export thing. But even some of the stuff that came out of Tanzania and Mozambique, and you'd get small stuff that was maybe 4th or 5th instar, maybe stuff that could be the length of your thumbnail in terms of the body itself.
Right.
But most of the stuff was towards adulthood or adult because it's easy to identify. And if you are a field collector in, Luxor, Egypt, and you flip over a rock and there's 3 scorpions there, 2 of them are the size of your pinky nail and they scamper off, and then one of them is the length of your thumb and jet black. Well, naturally, you're just going to grab the one that's the big one that's easily attained, throw it in your containment vessel, and then move on to the next rock. So you really didn't get a lot of baby stuff, but you did get a ton of gravid females of every species you could ever imagine. And I don't want to say a quarter, maybe 20%, maybe 15% of all the ones that came in were gravid. And a lot of times places like Strickland Underground, we would separate those, put them on a bookshelf, and if they didn't drop babies in a week or two, then we'd sell them. If they drop babies, we'd keep them there, let the babies have 2 or 3 molts, and then boom, now you're selling the babies. So
That's really cool. I've definitely heard of. I was talking to some collectors out in, I believe it was Thailand. It was on a forum, so they said they were from Thailand. Took their word from it, and they were mentioning how they're paid more for larger specimens, so they just go and grab go and grab the larger ones. Especially as you said, it's like it's easier to identify them too. Granted, that entire mess back then, Haplopelma, Stereopagabus, who knows that you're going to grab, depending on the area you're at. You could go across to the other side of a mountain, have completely different species, which with scorpions now, I wasn't as into, I want to say morphs as much as I am starting to look into now, like Astralis. I know there's Hector, there's Lib- Libsis. I don't know if, and there's and there's a couple other morphs out there that are really quite interesting. I need to look into it more to see if that's just like locality or just like now just like a well-defined morph. And I know that we talked about with with leaders Jordensis.
Jordaniensis or
Yeah,
Jordanensis?
Jordaniensis.
Jordanensis.
That I know I was like talking to you about like the different colors and everything, and then one of my friends he got a brood that was variety of different color morphs from jet black to
Really
chocolate to what they're referring to as albino, just like
interesting.
straight up light colored. So I'm really kind of curious. I thought it would be more locality specific, but if it's throwing off that, it's I don't know. Scorpions are starting to sound more like snakes to me than
Yeah.
than tarantulas.
Yeah, I have a good friend Ish who I hope to get on your show. He's a major bug guy. Um, he keeps and breeds pillar tails, and he's got what I mean, I don't know if this is public knowledge. He's probably gonna yell at me if he listens to this, but albino pillar tail, and
Huh.
it's not because it's an exoskeleton. It's not skin. It doesn't look yellow like we expect an albino, or even white like we'd expect an albino. It's almost like an ash color that's completely translucent, and you can see
Huh.
all the animal's organs. And then the eyes, the actual eye structure, both the light sensing eyes as well as the visual eyes, they are not the dark black color you'd expect to be on a lighter colored scorpion. They're almost completely clear looking. It's very interesting, and I think the biggest problem with those pillar tails is that they're so damn small. So he's basically trying to raise them up as fast as he can so that he can get really good high def macroscopic photos, because that's where the science is going, to these crazy macroscopic photos, and at the same time black light exposure on the macroscopic photos so you can really see the segmentation of the different body parts. And
Yeah.
yeah, so
Is that the genus on those?
I think it starts with the O.
It's the one that
I
starts with an O.
Yeah, I think it does.
Yeah.
Orthochirus.
Yeah, that's the ones I'm thinking then.
I haven't kept that species. I've seen them. I think the one that I've seen the most is the Israeli pillar tail.
yeah,
Those I'm still brushing up on the common names with them, but I think they're beautiful. In general, that's really exciting to hear that someone's actually working with them in the hobby. It's as I've noticed more in the scorpion hobby. It doesn't seem to be as like an influx of people working with certain genera or species. It seems like one person will leave and then another person will take their place. There's never just like a large amount of people, which kind of makes it frustrating just because it's like, oh, this guy was like really good, and for one reason or another,
Mhm.
they left the hobby, which is completely fine. Just take a step back, or you're getting frustrated with it. I know I did the same a few times, but it's good, especially with these like lesser known species compared to just like, oh, not saying the death stalkers aren't great, but like they're the community already has like an eye for them, so so to speak.
sure.
So they've been worked with a lot, but yeah, even with them now, even there's other species in the genus and morphs like Hebris, I believe.
Well, now it should be its own species now.
Yeah, and there's a couple
Yeah,
different morphs of them too. There's the bright, there's the light,
yeah.
and they're great little things now too. So it's yeah.
Yeah, my buddy Ish sent me the paper on the new taxa for Liaris, breaking down all the new species, and the photography that they used for this paper is absolutely awesome. I think, did I send you the screenshots of the black lights in chat? Oh, all right, I gotta send it to you guys. It is absolutely incredible. So
No, we had talked about it, but I don't think I actually saw them.
yeah, and it's difficult for myself as a layman to really break down what's what. And let's be real, to the untrained eye, it all looks the freaking same, but it is definitively different. And it's very cool to see how they don't even have to use DNA. They're just looking at them, but they're looking at them so finely and so acutely that it's clear that they are different species. And I want to know if those, like the Hebrus and stuff, if it is a regional phenotype or if it is a morph. And like you were saying, like the Jordanensis or the Jordan Deathstalker,
Yeah.
you had one mom that gave birth to multiple different colors. Well, that in itself would be a morph. Or has that mother bred with other regions? Like, how much have they traversed? You see where I'm driving with
Yeah.
this? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think now that more people are, don't get me wrong, I mean, like, we're still relying on imports, but now that some countries are closing off their imports and everything, it's great to see within the invert community that people are stepping up, breeding them more because, to be completely honest, as much as I'm not. Like breeding snakes can be difficult. Breeding inverts can be difficult too. You have to worry about controlling a lot other factors. I know, like with tarantulas, I'm not sure with scorpions, but with some tarantulas, you have to simulate a flooding season, flood the entire enclosure, let it dry completely, drop the temperatures, and yeah, it could get quite in depth with that. I'm sure there's definitely some snakes out there that are as tricky to breed, but a lot of people take for granted that just put the two scorpions in a box and they'll go. And I'm like, no, I mean, it's a lot more convoluted than that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I've seen accidental mishaps with breeding scorpions where I had a pair of Babicarus gigas, and I laid out how do I phrase this? I set the scene perfect, right? The conditions were great. I had nice big flat rocks in there for them to do their little dance, and the boy and the girl locked up, and they did the whole dance of romance. And the male dropped his spermatophore, and as he backed up to allow the female to come close to line herself up to the spermatophore, she knocked it over, and it wilted over like a dead flower. And here she is, I mean, not to get graphic, but here she is squatting down on rock and there's nothing there. And I felt really bad about that, and I tried to breathe them again. I was eventually not successful after about 2 or 3 different attempts over probably 2 or 3 years, and I never did breed them. But it can happen. It can happen in nature. It can happen in captivity. So there's way more to it than we know, and it's good to see guys like you doing it. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know. That's one of the reasons I liked communal species, like some of the centroides and stuff. Is like it was a byproduct of just keeping them together. It was like dart frogs.
Yeah.
Like it's gonna happen if you have them. If you've got a pair, at least a pair, like it's gonna happen. There's no stopping it.
Species too.
Or yeah.
Yeah.
It could be it could get overwhelming after a point, I guess, if you're not wanting more babies. But I thought it was cool. I liked seeing multiple females in a centroides enclosure with broods on their backs, and I just thought that was really cool. But
yeah, man, the whole town. And I've also had several species do long-term sperm retention. I had I had Deathstalkers do it. I've had Androctonus bicolor do it, and I had the bug for, I don't know, 9 months, 10 months by itself, and then boom, there's a clutch or a litter, excuse me. So
yeah,
the Buthidae, they hold on to that stuff for a long time, man.
I never bred any Androctonus, but I had some Australis slings at one point.
Just mom gave birth?
No, I don't. I bought them from somebody, and they were still tiny. But those little things, man, when they want to move, they move. Like,
oh yeah,
adult Androctonus, I don't consider to be all that fast. Like, they're quick, but they're not fast.
Right, right. They don't have to be.
those slings, man. There was a point where, and I mean, they were big enough. No, I don't know. They were quick, and I had one somehow spring out of one of the little saucer delis, like the tiny ones, and flail out onto my leg, and then sit there, and I'm like,
cool.
Well, yeah. So, but I want to get get more of those eventually. They were just such a cool genus. I just love the look of them. I like the armored tank look. Same with Houghton Toda. You know, those are really cool too.
Yeah, man, for sure.
Yeah, I was super with them. I was like, my biggest fear was because I was talking to someone before. I believe it was Drew. He went by Arachno Drew on Arachno boards. I'm not sure if you guys like frequented that forum as
I
much.
did back in the day, man, but it's been a long time since I've been on there.
Yeah, same. I haven't been on there since for 10 years or so.
Yeah.
But like he's great with breeding Parabuthus. I actually got, when he was getting out of the hobby, I think all his Transvolicus,
Nice.
all his Philosis. I think I got a pair of Granulatus from him too. But
Cool.
but like he was telling me because how to how to set them up this really small ones, because at that time I never dealt with like very small instar Parabuthus, but yeah, they can boogie when they want to, like when they're extremely small.
Oh yeah.
And I was extremely paranoid about them like escaping. I'm not sure if you guys I believe it's superiorshipping.com. It's like they had these like little square I don't want to say, I guess like pecking enclosures. I guess they're
Yeah, it's like the things that strawberries and blueberries come in.
Yeah. And I would get the tallest one, even though just because my biggest fear was because I was living either with roommates or my parents at the time, and the last thing I want is like a scorpion coming out, especially in one that they didn't know was in the house. So because I had an escapee Death Stalker, well, it was escapee for like a minute, really try to fight the urge not to grab it, but but after that I was super anal about just like taking cotton swab every now and then, especially if it was the scorpion was in there for an extended period of time. Just brush off all the dirt and everything, because they could gain traction quite easily if they really want to. I'm glad scorpions cannot climb smooth surfaces normally.
Fantastic.
Otherwise that will make for a more interesting hobby.
Oh yeah. That's the saving grace, is that they can't climb out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, let me rephrase that. They can climb out. They can't climb vertical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I worry less about escapees there, because you know you have the magic ability to blacklight for things if they go missing, and to me that takes at least some of the stress of that away. You know, with spiders and snakes, it's a little different. But
well, can I tell you a horrible scorpion escapee story?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So many moons ago, per Florida regulation, the venomous room has to be quote unquote escape proof. It has to be sealed off completely. Air vents are screened, door sweeps, window locks, all kinds of weather stripping. It's escape proof, right? And I get inspected to make sure that it's up to code and par and all that jazz. Well, I had very long time ago, somebody brought in a bunch of emperor scorpions from Sierra Leone. They were gigantic, bigger than Swammerdami, just massive. I think the one female was like almost 12 inches long with the tail extended, just huge scorpions. And I had, what was it? I think 2.1, maybe, I think it was, or maybe been 2.2. I can't remember. It was a long time ago. And I figured, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the little drawer organizers that you have on your desk for like your highlighters and your Sharpies. It's a little drawer, just enough to hold some pens and a calculator that you'd have on your desk. So I'm going to get a couple of those. I'll throw Eco Earth in there, and then I'll just put one scorpion in each drawer, and I'll basically make a rack system for scorpions. I was like, they're so big, they're not going to squeeze through the little sliver of a crack, right? Oh, man. They did not squeeze through. They pushed the drawers open.
Oh.
Yeah. And I had 3 giant emperor scorpions loose in the snake room. And again, it was escape proof. I couldn't find them. I blacklight, I moved furniture, I could not find them. And then about, maybe almost a year and a half, almost 2 years later, I was moving furniture and I found both of them dead. They never got out. So the room was escape proof, and the animals were recovered despite being deceased, and they weren't dead. They weren't dead that long, to say. So they survived walking around that room for God knows how long, probably eating escaped crickets. But
That's pretty wild.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, like I've heard of like people trying to set up scorpions like that too, as well as do you know they're either like the storage containers for beads or like fishermen like fish and tackle boxes, how
yeah,
they have like
yeah,
the different
yeah.
things.
Dividers.
I've seen people try to keep like spiderlings inside them, and then scorpions. It never turned out well.
No,
Because
no.
every so often you get someone that's like they think they have like a genius idea, and it turns out it's like no, someone's been there, done that. Don't do it. They're like, no, it'll be fine, and you end up with like one fat sling,
Oh yeah,
and or even just like multiple scorpions or like decimated in there. But yeah, I've definitely been walking around the container store as when I was younger and be like, I may be onto it, like because
I can make it work.
yeah, I know. I'm like snakes could be in Iraq. What about scorpions? But,
yeah,
but on the bright
yeah.
side, at least they were emperors and they weren't like death
Oh
stalkers
yeah, exactly. Well,
or
I
something.
would have never done that. Yeah. And I mean, dude, these things were so big. I mean, their bodies was almost the size of a pack of cigarettes, like
Oh
just
well,
giant scorpions. I don't know what the hell they were feeding them, but yeah,
yeah. I feel like, and especially now, it's like if you would have told me just like like true emperor scorpions would be hard to find.
yeah.
Now it's wild how things are now.
We used to get, I don't even want to say, thousands, thousands of emperor scorpions from Ghana and Togo and Sierra Leone and Liberia and almost all the West African countries that we physically could, legally could. And you would take a horse trough and you dump in an entire, probably 2 or 3 of those like 55-gallon mulch bags, just dump them in there, and there would be 500 emperor scorpions in that one horse trough,
Oh well.
just on top of each other. Some of them are eating each other, some of them are breeding. You know, there'd be like 4 or 5 water basins that would get changed twice a day with sponges in there so they wouldn't, fall over and drown and whatnot. And then you'd have like, 10 little tiny handheld like coconut husk hides that we just put in there, and you'd lift a coconut hide up and like 10 scorpions would fall out because they all crammed together communally. It was an amazing time, but you can totally see how they were overfished. They really
Yeah.
were.
It's one of those things like I've never kept a true emperor. I've kept like Panda's dictator. I believe it's dictator.
Yeah, which is
like
miserable, by the way. It's a miserable pet, dude.
it was my just off-brand emperor scorpion. And it's like all the
Yeah.
cool kids had emperor scorpions, and I was just either like too late, and by the time I was like, you know what? Now I'm going to invest in a pair, and now they're just like non-existent. Or you go to somewhere and they'll be like, oh, selling emperor scorpions, you buy one. It's not. It's a
Yeah.
different one. So
Yeah, I mean, we used to do like kids' birthday parties and stuff with animals, and you would take the emperor scorpion and you'd put it in your mouth. You turn around, you'd put it in your hand, you put the scorpion in your mouth, you turn around and you give the kids that are sitting on the floor, elementary school, whatever, you give them a funny look. And then all of a sudden the teacher would give you the look like, oh God, what's he going to do? And you just open your mouth and it would crawl out onto your beard, and the kids would scream and hoot and holler. If you look at a dictator wrong, dude, that thing's going to grab you. They're horrible, horrible pet scorpions. I don't know why anyone ever got them. Ugh. But
I had some species of forest scorpion at one point, and I don't know. There's just something about those and emperors that I never found them to be all that appealing.
well,
I don't know.
think
There's just something about
appeal to
the
the
build
yeah,
of Androides and Androctonus and some of that stuff that I just like more. I don't.
you like the high speed look. You like the lean, sleek lines. Yeah, you're not into the more stocky, more robust species. I get that. But there is just something cool about just this big, giant black scorpion that's totally tolerant to whatever you want to really do to it. I mean, I've been stung by emperor, and it was less than a bee sting for me personally, but it took a lot to get that thing to get angry, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, that was it was the perfect pet scorpion because you really didn't have to worry about anything. They were super hardy, and that's why we collected too many of them and we ruined it for ourselves.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate both. I preferred much like more like the I guess like toxic species just because I was more interested in their body morphology and just how they're taking down prey. But I could appreciate just like something about like one of those larger forest scorpions with the less toxic just tear apart prey opposed to waiting for the venom to like take effect. It was always like I always had one of the larger bodied scorpions as like in my collection when I kept them at all times, just because like, oh okay, I get to see the Deathstalkers freak out. I love the at least the ones, some of the ones I've kept, they did the whole like flail grab jab 100 times, and then
It's the breakdancing.
yeah, and then whereas just like some like the Asian forest scorpions that that I had, they would just like grab and start tearing apart. I'm just like, there's just something metal about that.
Yeah, two very different tracks to the same finish line. So.
Yeah. I will say too is I also had Pandinus viatoris. You ever seen that?
I have not.
Mm-hmm.
So it is so the dictator has the red patches on the claws,
Mhm.
and then it has some red up the tail. The viatoris is essentially, and to be honest, at this point, I'd love to look it up. I'm just going through the old Rolodex in my brain of stuff that we used to keep, and it may even be a phenotype of Imperator. I don't know anymore. They may have lost that species status. I don't know, but it was a normal looking emperor, but the whole thing had a burgundy hue. And I got pictures I'll send you guys later, but like the Telson itself was this rich crimson red color. And then the legs themselves had a dark crimson, almost blood red. But the rest of the body, the pincers and the main carapace and the whole tail and everything just had this real crimson red hue to it. And we didn't get a lot of them, but that would be one of those species where you get 100 emperors and one of the 100 were red, and it was Viatorus.
Oh, that's
So I mean,
amazing.
that was pretty cool.
So,
Yeah, so
go ahead.
oh no, so I just kind of like dive in more into you now, like your experience working with more, like with more of the hot scorpions as well as just I know that currently you keep like your room like a desert style, like an arid style. Was it always the case when you kept scorpions as well? There.
No, when I was younger and I had all the scorpions, I basically kept the snake room at room temp, 74, 72 degrees Fahrenheit. And then some of the scorpions that were in Vivs, I had a little tiny heat lamp on them, like a little tiny halogen one. But almost all the scorpions, the desert stuff, the tropical stuff, I kept it all at room temp,
Mhm.
and everything did pretty good. Some of the sub-Saharan stuff would only breed in our winter, and I don't know if that was because it was cooler outside or maybe there was less humidity because it was winter because it's so humid down in South Florida. I don't know. But it wasn't until this past year that I've really focused on making the quote unquote desert room. So all those species, Asian species and South American stuff that I kept, and some of the more tropical African stuff, I wouldn't even dream of keeping it now just because the room is such a desert room. And I'm having a hard enough time keeping the corn snakes happy. You know what I mean? I wouldn't want to worry about individual deli cups or containers or tubs with tropical species of scorpions. I would purely focus on arid steppe stuff or honestly just MENA region, desert, arid.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I mean, I was kind of in a similar boat where, especially during the winters, when I was living in Chicago, I lived in this like pretty old apartment building. So whenever we had central heat, whenever that kicked on, it would drop the humidity down to like 10%,
Oh wow.
15%.
Oof.
And that's when I know like usually my tropical species like spiders, scorpions, and everything, then I would have to be on top of like moistening the substrate at least every day or every other day at the very least if I didn't want to see any kind of issues on the but on the bright side, my Deathstalkers, my Androctonus, my Parabuthus, they all did great. I'm thankful I never ran into any sort of like fungal issues or that. I also want to get your take on that too, if you ever ran into those, especially when getting animals imported and getting them accustomed. Did you run into any kind of like fungal issues? I know there's one that happens on the exoskeleton with scorpions, especially more arid species in higher humidity, that could be quite detrimental, that some people run into in higher humidity environments.
Well, I never had any fungal issues on the inverts themselves. I would get the occasional, white white fuzz fungus in some of the more tropical species like spinifer,
Mm-hmm.
or even some of the Pendina species. The eco earth that I was using, the cocoa husk that I was using was just too damp, and you get some white fluff mold in there. But it's it's not like an amphibian where you have to be very careful. So I would just use straight chlorhexidine, 2%. I had it diluted in a spray bottle, and I would literally turn the nozzle to like the shoot the gun squirt, and I would just squirt the little tuft of white fluff. The chlorhexidine, which is a antifungal, would kill the fungus, and it added a little humidity to the dirt, and the scorpion isn't really drinking it or breathing it or anything like that. So
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't worry about it too much. Other than that, I really never had fungal issues. One time I don't even remember what it was. I had one of the more tropical species got like a film on it, which may very well have been a fungus. But again, I don't know if that was maybe its own excrement that kind of got leaked out onto itself,
Mhm.
or if it was uh, some kind of residual goo from eating something. I don't know, but it wound up going away. I remember vividly just spraying it down with water on a paper towel, and it obviously got freaked out, and it didn't discolor or change or anything. It was just stuck on there. So I kind of thought that maybe it was just a bad excrement, because they will tend to get like white crust around
Yeah.
the base of the telson.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've ever kept scorpions long term in like a 6-inch deli cup, the whole rim of the deli cup is just covered in white excrement. A lot of times too, they'll get cocoa husk or eco earth, whatever, stuck to the end of their tail because the substrate was dry, they defecated, and now the substrate stuck to where the defecation was on their tail. So other than that, I've never had any kind of mites or anything. I've never had any kind of skin issues or exoskeleton issues of any kind. I've been really lucky in that regard, but I know other people haven't been so lucky.
Yeah, definitely, especially with the onset of this is going to kind of make me sound old with social media, especially like Reddit, the different communities there and Facebook groups. I've seen a lot more. I was blanking the name before when I said fungal issues, but I guess I meant like mycosis.
Okay.
All that usually it's like, oh, what's happening? It's usually with the more arid species where there's like breaks in their appendages of where their joints are and everything. It usually kind of starts over there. And from what I gather, it's when it's I've never really had it happen to me before, as far as I know. Um, you can't really cure the parts that have already been damaged. You could kind of just halt the spread of it, but it seems like some issue like those kinds of issues are becoming more prevalent as the hobby grows, or maybe they were more prevalent before too, and just nobody ever talked about it as much, especially with the imported specimens. To because I'm not sure necessarily if they're comparable to snakes, like, or reptiles, in the sense where they're used to set conditions, and taking them out of there, they become more prone to issues, or if it's just like, I don't know, something else.
I don't I don't think I've ever experienced that myself. I know what you're talking about, and I've heard other people talk about it, but that was never really a concern for me or some of my friends that were keeping scorpions. It was more so a concern with spiders.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I've had spiders molt, where they started off with 8 legs, and after they molt, they only had 7, or they had like the first segment of that leg
Yeah,
was
my
there,
Metallic is missing a foot for some reason.
just the foot, right?
Yep, just the foot.
Yeah, and the rest of the leg is perfectly fine. The pressure is all there, and I've had scorpions do the same thing where, a 8th or 9th instar, and it's like an adult ready to rock and roll, and it goes to molt, and like it's missing 2 joints on 2 legs, and it lives its life and it eats and hunts and does whatever. But for whatever reason, something happened to those parts, and they self-ejected, if you will. You know what I mean? But I've seen that, but I've never seen anything that I can recall really.
See, and that's something I think about too with molts in general between scorpions and spiders and stuff. Is like I can't imagine that it takes very much for one to go wrong in something and to have issues where something snags or something isn't positioned just right to where then it doesn't molt like it's supposed to, and you end up losing legs and things like that. So I'm always curious as to sort of what can be done to give them the best molding conditions possible. And I'm sure hydration and humidity are the main factors there. But I just noticed within the last like 2 weeks that Metallica is missing its foot, because I was like, it was out and about, and so I was like, why do you look different? And I took a closer look at it. I'm like, wait a second. I was like, you're missing a damn foot, and I don't know what happened to it. Like, I don't, I'm assuming it was something to do with previous molt, but it hasn't stopped it. Like, it's still rocking and rolling, but I just thought it was strange because I'm like, when did that even happen? Like, what are you doing?
I know some bark scorpions, and then also true spiders. A wide variety of them too. It's like an important thing is keeping like a little slanted piece of bark at least, or something horizontal that they could kind of latch onto and push out of. And I've seen posts where people don't really offer that, especially with like the Titius or I think some Centroides as well.
Yeah.
If they don't have that, then they're kind of SOL when it comes to when it comes to molting.
Really?
I don't think I've ever had a Centroides not molt on a piece of cork or decor.
Yeah,
I've never had one just molt on the substrate.
Yeah,
It's always attached to something, like a locust, like, or a cicada. Like, they're always, you always find the shells attached to something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll send some photos that and that I have with the different Titius species. I kept. Do you know that I want to say cork board that people like spin things onto?
Like orchid board.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Or just like, because I got mine at Office Depot.
Okay.
And yeah, just like those, you hang up to the wall, you push pin stuff inside there. Uh, I was cheap, and as long as they're not chemically treated, uh, they were cheap, effective way to just cut up in little strips, pop them in a deli cup. Um, Scorpions love them and everything. I've seen people use styrofoam too. Yeah, it may not be the greatest looking.
I just like to look a regular cork bark, man. I'll spend the extra money. I like to look at that.
Yeah, if I could definitely pick through, like especially during expos, like when Tinley rolled around, I would run in there and cherry pick cork bark pieces. But I used to get screwed just ordering boxes of cork bark, and it would be everything that I didn't need or that was too thick for a little deli cup.
Yeah,
and I was also kind of a bit paranoid. Well, I'm usually paranoid when keeping inverts in general. Putting in like a thicker piece and having like a Centroides stuff itself into a smaller, like to one of the small holes. I'm like, come on, now I can't even see you, and I don't want to accidentally.
Yeah.
It's
Well, that goes back to what we were going to talk about earlier about how to handle certain species that are a little more high risk. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and that's kind of a great segue into one of the points that I kind of want to like talk about. So just to reiterate, did you get venomous snake experience first, and then
I did? Yeah. I most definitely had started venomous training as I started to venture down the invert rabbit hole.
Okay.
But I didn't get my first. So just like venomous snakes, I will always preface with get what you want, but if what you want is more than your abilities at that time, don't do that. Don't put yourself in harm's way if you don't have to. So if somebody said to me, "Hey, I'm looking for a first scorpion," I'm not going to recommend Androctonus. I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah.
There's a million other scorpions, whether it be Hadrurus or Diplocentris, something that's even stateside, even if it's Centroides. A Centroides from the United States is infinitely better than an Androctonus for your first pet scorpion. Um,
Excluding Sculpturatus.
yeah, correct. Now, I had got four of the most lethal scorpions on the planet as my first set. But at the time, I was also working with a lot of other venomous reptiles, and I had been doing it for probably over 2 years at that point. So I also had learned about inverts from other venomous keepers. And they're like, look, you're going to handle this exactly the same way you would venomous snake. Only instead of a snake hook, now we're using rubber tip tweezers. Instead of using a hemostat to put a rat in a cage, you're using a hemostat to remove a piece of cork bark or what have you. Almost, and those who listen to the other shows, people know that like some of my desert species of snake, they don't have water bowls. Like my Cerastes, I give them water. I give them like a bottle cap of water every 3 or 4 months. That's it. And with the arid species of scorpion, as well as the tropical stuff, when I had it, that's not the case. I would always have a normal Zephyrhills, Poland Springs, whatever drinking water, spring water bottle you got at home. I would put that cap with that much water, and then once a week I would top it off. And after a week, it's completely dry anyway, especially with an arid species. And if it's a tropical species, they've filled that bottle cap full of eco earth or whatever. But I always made sure there was a source of water for those scorpions because we talk about bad molts and hydration, what have you. And even on some of the desert stuff like Laris and Androctonus, a bottle cap in a deli cup wasn't enough humidity to upset the desert lifestyle because they're still living in microclimates in the wild.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's 140 degrees Fahrenheit on the top of the sand, under the rock where the scorpion is, it's probably in the 70s or 80s and has some humidity to it. So the bottle cap thing was a really big deal for me. And that's one of the things Pete Katz taught me was, just put a bottle cap in. And whether they drink it or not, it's peace of mind, and it can't do any real damage in that regard.
Right.
So
yeah, I definitely especially I get it. Some people want to use like more like special kind of water bowls for their for their hot scorpions, but especially with my hot scorpions or even just like widows or recluses, I would keep something that's easily I could just like bottle caps. I used to go around to the lab I worked in and like collect them and everything, just because take them, they're dirty, throw them away. I don't. I want to be in the enclosure as little time as possible. Just so again, it was also because I was living with other people. I didn't want something to go wrong and everything. I was very prudent of like, as you said before, use forceps, or use tongs um, to do everything. And that did coming from tarantulas. That did take a little bit of to kind of hammer into myself and everything. Make sure like this I need to be a little bit more careful because I do think in the hobby itself compared to with venomous snakes, there isn't as emphasis. There is an emphasis of being careful and everything, but I feel like just because they're inverts, some people are more like blasé or nonchalant
some
about
people, I would say most people.
yeah, like I remember seeing at this one pet store before. I don't know if it was like was it in it was like in Blue Island or right outside of Chicago and everything. A little kid like I say little kid, but he's probably like a preteen. Um,
Yeah.
like walk out with a Death Stalker, and I'm just I don't know if he like knew what it knew what it was completely or anything, but that just kind of blew my mind, especially when people give so much respect to venomous snakes, as they should. Um, that people think just because it's a small little bug that
Yeah.
there's no reason to. But that kind of ties into my other question is like, what kind of you did you did mention that you used like tongs and everything.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, I can give a breakdown if you want of like procedures and protocols that I did, if you'd like.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
that'd be cool because
yeah,
you
and that's one of the easiest things is when you one of the first things that I did was look up the toxinology of some of these species because I was so vested in venomous reptiles and enamored with the whole concept of toxins and venom and foreign proteins. Like that was just I was enamored by it. Going down the scorpion rabbit hole and even some of the centipede stuff and tarantulas and true spiders, like that's still fascinating to me. But obviously, scorpions is what I gravitated to. People don't realize that Liaris, Deathstalkers, Androctonus, the thicktails, they have the same toxin rating as the cobra family. So people don't realize that a tiny little bug that's literally the length of half your thumb can end your life is crazy, and people don't realize it. And I feel like I don't like scaring people. And there's obviously you can't compare the maintenance of a 2-inch long scorpion to the maintenance of an actual 4 or 5 foot long cobra. You
Right.
can't compare the two, but the awareness of the danger still needs to be there.
Mhm.
And I would always preach that to people. And I had friends that held death stalkers, and I shamed them no different than if they were holding a rattlesnake in their hand. It's the same thing. It's just one of them is more intelligent than the other, and they got lucky. They're like, "Oh, look, dude, I was holding the death stalker." I'm like, "Well, no, you weren't holding a death stalker. The death stalker thought that you were the ground and therefore didn't attack you." You see what I'm saying? I said, had you come in with your other finger and touched it, you would have got stung, or worse, it could have latched on and really got you. Because some of those species, they grab on with those pincers for dear life and rapid stings, rapid succession stings. I've also heard stories of, it's obviously a binary chemical that they're producing, having one person having an adverse reaction to one sting and having a completely different reaction to another sting, not knowing if it was an allergic reaction, if it was residual symptoms, or if it was just the scorpion didn't give you both venoms. So, I'm sorry, I got on a little rant there. What we were talking about procedures, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No, it's all good.
So I was a container within a container kind of guy. Okay. So let's say I was keeping a scorpion in a 6-inch deli cup. Okay. That 6-inch deli cup was locked inside of a vivarium or a cage. I had some spare vision cages. I had some spare exoterras, and I just had a little lock on them just because I didn't want anything to happen. And even though the scorpion is not physically capable of popping the lid off a deli cup, even though the scorpion is not physically capable of undoing the latch of the cage and opening the doors, right? It was a peace of mind thing for me to know that I secured all of the steps so I could walk away with that peace of mind, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Before I leave the snake room, I lock check every single lock, even stuff I didn't open, even stuff I didn't clean, I didn't touch. I lock check every single lock. And I did the same thing with the scorpions. The deli cups, when I put my hand on the deli cup and I press all the little poppers down on the top of the deli cup, you know what I'm talking about?
Mhm.
I then take the deli cup and I hold it up to my eye, perpendicular to my head, and I look at the rim to make sure that I got every single pop. And then that deli cup would then go into another cage with a sliding glass or door or a hinge glass door with a lock on it, what have you. But when I was cleaning and doing maintenance, that deli cup or that sterilite container would go into another container that was bigger and taller. Okay.
Mhm.
So if the scorpion managed for some reason to escape out of its container that I was cleaning, it was still in another container.
Right.
It was a container within a container. It was a nesting, if you will. And a lot of times I had just a normal 6-inch deli with a lid, and I would extract the scorpion. I would wait and see if I could get it on a piece of bark. And then I would use hemostats, 24-inch, 20-inch hemostats to grab that piece of bark with the scorpion on it and then pick up the whole piece of bark, put the whole piece of bark in another deli cup. Then I use another set of hemostats to put the lid on that deli cup because I don't want my fingers being that close. And then I would use my hand to push the deli cup lid down, knowing that the bug is on the piece of bark in that deli cup. And some people listening to this are going to think I'm absolutely neurotic and crazy, but no, it's procedure and protocol, and it's guaranteeing no accidents. And I feel like that's a huge deal. So just to go over it again real quick, deli cup inside of a larger, taller container. I pop the lid with my fingers, use hemostats to remove the lid of that deli cup, have a separate deli cup where I can either grab the scorpion by the tail with the hemostats and put it in the other deli, or finagle the scorpion onto a piece of bark and use the hemostats to remove that piece of bark and put the whole piece of bark in the other deli. Then using a separate set of hemostats or tweezers to place the lid on that container. Then I use my hand to seal the lid. Now I can clean out the primary dwelling of that animal with my hands or whatever, put the deli cup back in. Again, pop it with my hand, but use the hemostats to remove the lid, use the hemostats to remove the bug and put it back in its original home, and then use hemostats or tweezers to put that lid back on that one. Yeah, sorry, that's a mouthful.
No, I mean, you mentioned that like some people may think you're neurotic. Well, mine is similar to yours, but I did this with all my tarantulas. For example, deli cup, larger sterilite tub.
Yeah.
Spray down the sides of the sterilite tub with water, just because with tarantulas they can't get a foothold on that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would also put down in like one corner like a crumpled up piece of paper towel, just in case spiders. I never had a scorpion that really bolted out like that, but spiders will go for the nearest kind of dark place, so that makes it easier. And I would use I would use longer forceps, and I would use a paintbrush to a larger, I forgot the name of the style of paintbrush, but I had like a 12-inch, over 12-inch long like handle, and that was to kind of coax the scorpion on, like on a piece of cork bark or on whatever kind of thing, so I can move it. And then that's when I would do cage maintenance. Every so often, I'd try to remove all the dead crickets, the dried out husks of the crickets. And yeah, I mean, I know I was talking to some friends, they thought that was overkill, but I'm just like, I'd much rather be safe than sorry, especially with some of these species like hot and touted species, Hyderabad, Tamilus, and all these. There's just not enough information out there, and quite frankly, I do not want to be the first one to make it on, to make it on that list. And knowing that I don't want to be the bad face for the hobby. Just
of
something
course.
comes up and everything, and just like I want to make sure that animals like yes, I understand some people think they're just bugs, but yeah, I mean, I care for them just as I care for any of the snakes that I have.
Yeah.
And the first thing comes is their safety, and that helps like me know where they're at all times. They don't actually accidentally get smashed or anything. But
for sure.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that we do like things in a similar manner, and I hope people are also doing things more responsibly like that too.
Yeah, I'll also jump in with, we talk about using 24 or 20-inch hemostats. Distance is your friend. The farther away you are, the better. Obviously, the bug is not capable of, I don't want to say acrobatics because you'd be surprised, but it's not a snake. It's not a lizard. It's not going to jump across the container and fly up the wall. Like it's a scorpion. It's incapable of climbing smooth surfaces. Now, I use the hemostats that have the teeth on them to grab the deli cup lid, to grab the cork bark, maybe to take out that bottle cap I was talking about. But I would never use hemostats, whether they have teeth or not, on an actual scorpion, because I've seen people that actually crush the exoskeleton because they didn't realize how hard they were squeezing. If a scorpion is sitting on a piece of cork bark, I can use those hemostats to grab the cork bark. And I want the ones with teeth because I'm grabbing a piece of wood and I want to have a good firm grip on that piece of wood. I don't want it to slide out and fall. Now the scorpion's injured or the scorpion's loose in the container or the secondary container, because we're doing a tub inside of a tub, right? But if I'm going to grab the actual invert, I'm going to use tweezers that are non-locking, that are at least 10 to 12 inches long, if not longer. It's harder with the longer ones because there is no locking in it. They have a lot of flex to them. And I'll make sure that they're rubber tipped. And if they're not rubber tips, I'll get some liquid latex and I'll dip the tips of those tweezers in liquid latex. That way there's some cushion there. And with scorpions specifically, there's two good places to, in my opinion, to grab a scorpion to remove just the animal. One of them, and again, this is also species specific. Some of them you may not want to, but one of them is at the base of the telson or the base of the stinger at the end of the tail, that last segment. That's a good spot to get it. Most scorpions are going to lean forward and almost stretch themselves out. And they're thinking, man, I'm in the air. What the hell's going on? And you can do it relatively quickly. Just lift the bug up and put it in the other container. Another way to do it with some of the more wiry stuff that does do some acrobatic stuff, you can actually use the tweezers to grab them at the base of the tail where the tail meets the body. And I'll do that for heavier bodied stuff. I'll do that for scorpions that have a much thicker tail, a larger tail, like Androctonus australis, for example. A lot of times, if you grab the scorpion at the base of the tail where it meets the body, it may try and weasel its way out. It may try and defend itself, but it's not going to lash out like it does when you grab the base of the stinger or the end of the tail. Most species, in my experience, when you grab that base of the tail, their first inclination is to rear back with their pincers, grab onto whatever's there, sneak their tail out, and start to sting or squirt venom or whatever. But the biggest thing is distance. I want 10 or 12 inches away. I want the rubber tips that don't lock, so I'm not crushing their exoskeleton if I'm too aggressive in my hold. And I want to do it relatively quickly. I don't want to just throw the bug, but I want to lift it up and drop it down nicely. And doing that container within a container is always going to be successful as long as the secondary container is big enough and tall enough.
Yeah, definitely. And just to add in something really quick, I know that not a lot of I'm sure there's a number of people that keep Parabuthus, and I was talking to Drew about this too, and he's like, just because there's a very slim chance that they will spray venom, still go into their enclosure, do maintenance as if they're like going to spray you and
Right.
everything. I'm one of the people that wear glasses, quite obviously, but
Nerd.
but that would play to my advantage. I know I was talking to him, and this guy has bred quite a few of them, and he's had a handful of them spray at him. It may not be the most accurate, but that's still something I don't want to have to deal with.
we
So
need to touch base on that off air because I am fascinated by that. I have kept Lyosoma, I've kept Transvalicus, and this is going to sound horrible, but I have provoked Transvalicus on purpose to try and get a reaction. I keep spitting cobras. I have a face shield. So here I am sitting there with tweezers, poking this scorpion with my face shield on, trying to get it to do something. And the best that I could get was two little drops that just drizzled out. So
yeah,
I definitely want to hear more about that later.
yeah, definitely. I do love. Part of me loves seeing like threat displays of inverts in general. Like sometimes, yeah, I'll say it. Sometimes the Theraphos or Theraposture scares the shit out of me.
Oh, for
But
sure. What do you mean sometimes?
but like with what I forgot the species name now that's described, but Keelback is basically like electric blue, beautiful electric blue undersides to the leg. So seeing that third display, as well as some scorpion ones, how they'll have those open pincers, rear back, doing that. There's something just like impressive about that. It's like, wow, this little thing wants to pick a fight with,
Oh,
with
for sure.
something as big as me.
Oh, I'm dying of mosquito bites because my thermocell died. I'm gonna jump off real quick and recharge my thermocell. But when I come back, Scorpio Maris palmatus.
So I know we hit on it a little bit before, Justin, but would you say that you've kept more tropical species than arid species?
No, I think it's probably safe to say that I've kept more of your desert dwellers than I have tropical. Um, I don't know if it was mentioned earlier when I got up to take a leak real quick. But like when it comes to the really toxic stuff, I think labeling is wildly important, because I look at that the same way you look at, if you have venomous snakes, labeling those cages so that if anything happens to you, God forbid, like EMTs, fire has to come into your house or whatever, like having something labeled clearly so that people know that it's not something that needs to be opened.
Absolutely.
Even with the tarantulas and stuff, usually I'll put like on the scorpions especially, I'll put the the scientific name and then the little triangle with the exclamation point in it or something, just to signify that it is something serious. The tarantulas, I'll do it with like the Bacillotheria and stuff, just because of the the speed factor and the potential for medically significant bites. But I don't know, I think labeling that kind of stuff is very important. And then if you have younger kids, which I have one currently, granted she's 11 and doesn't really care about a lot of that stuff. When they're smaller and they're much more curious and they're mobile and they're walking and they're not realizing that they shouldn't touch things, I'm very much a proponent of putting things up higher where they can't be reached.
Yeah.
So like that bicolor that Phil sent me as a housewarming present, that went up on the top shelf because at the time she was, I think, like 7. So I was like, let's put this up high and let's kind of tuck it away where it doesn't draw any attention or anything like that. So
yeah, definitely. I did something similar. When I was in college, I did something similar to what Phil mentioned. I was it a boa master or something? It was like this like older enclosure and everything, and I also used whatever radiant heat panel came inside there as also just a second like heating device. But I kept all my scorpion enclosure inside there, and not only did that function as like I could have more control of my temp, because let's be honest, my roommate wouldn't want me to keep the thermostat on to like 74 all the time,
Right.
in Illinois. And that was also just because I was in college. I know people in college party. I've heard horror stories about people keeping snakes. I forgot where I read this. Was it? It was either like ballpythons.com. Don't come at me for being on that forum. Or King Snake, where someone's like, someone replaced water with beer in my boa's enclosure. And I'm like, I kept my door locked and everything, but you just never know. And so I would keep a lock on there, as well as I did not do that with my tarantulas, but I did label them. And I also kind of kept, especially with my slings that were in deli cups, smaller deli cups, condiment cups, I would keep them. I would organize them. This is gonna sound horrible because I had a lot. So I had like 15 quart Sterilite tubs, and one tub would be filled with the deli cups, and I'll write "Old World" on there, and then I would explain to my friends, like, if you want me to show you a transfer or whatever, pick from the New World bin, because the last thing I want you to do is accidentally breathe on a spider wrong and have it start bolting. But yeah, I 100% do agree with being a big proponent of labeling and just making sure that people are aware. Granted, like I said before, when I was a much younger kid living with my parents, I did not label any of my tarantulas. They did not know I have tarantulas. They did not know I had snakes. I was young and dumb, and I fully admit that. But moving forward, I would encourage a lot of people not to do that. Especially because, just like, I did public outreach a lot, especially when I was working abroad, just and like even in the United States, and just people's perception on how, oh, it's like invert, it's harmless. I'm like, well, no, but yeah, you brought up great points.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing what a label maker can go,
Yeah.
I told you the story about when I worked at Walgreens and the lady was buying shoe boxes.
No.
Oh man. So I mean, this was like maybe 2008. I don't know. It was like one of my first jobs. I worked at a Walgreens, right? And I was a cashier. And we had these shoe boxes that I loved. And at the time I had, Parabuthus, I had a bicolor, I had some Australis and some other stuff. And so like she was getting these shoe boxes and I was like, oh, these are awesome. I use these, I keep scorpions and these are great for him. Like, this is what I'm keeping him. And she, like, without skipping a beat, just looked me dead in the eye. And she's like, I bet you make bombs in your basement too. And I was like,
wow.
damn. Like, I was kind of stood there like, the fuck did you say to me? Like,
Wow.
and then she just took her receipt and walked off. And I haven't forgotten about it to this day. And it still just makes me laugh because she just like deadpan, like she was not kidding at all. She like legitimately was like, you probably make bombs in your basement too. I was like, ooh, someone's having a bad day.
I've definitely gotten what's it that it was that one movie, The Human Centipede or whatever. I've never seen it, but someone described like in that dude's basement he kept inverts and
Oh,
everything,
really?
and they're like, "That's some Human Centipede kind of shit." I'm like, "What?" I'm just like, first of
Of
all,
all the
no,
things to pick, that's where we went. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Well,
no,
if it makes you feel better, you know, I had a label maker, and every single deli, every single tub, every single vivarium had the scientific name, the common name, and danger venomous on it. Just because I had to do that for the snakes anyway, I might as well do it for the
Right.
scorpions too. And then I had a stack of. Do you guys remember visionariums? Do you know what those are?
Vaguely.
Okay, so
I've heard
so
it.
vision cage. Everyone knows what vision cages are.
Mhm.
Vision cages made they used to make it called a visionarium, and it was a 20 long that was all glass, and it had sliding doors like a vision cage, but they were stackable, and they had a recess in the top for a UVB light strip. And I had a stack of 4 of them on top of a desk, and I had a key lock on each one as if it was a venomous snake. And I put all the 6-inch deli cups with all the lethal stuff in there, and I had a label that said Club Boothidai. I mean, nobody saw this stuff. It was just for me, you know. But you know, the top one was Androctonus, the one below that was Lieris, the one below that was Parabuthus, the one below that was Hodentota, and I did the same exact thing you did. So great minds think alike.
Oh, speaking of Blue today, before I forget, I remember sending you both like some photos of Hemiscorpius.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's an I'd love to like talk more about it even off air, just in general. The only
Yeah.
Buthidae, non-Buthidae that, or one of the few that is extremely toxic
Yeah.
uh, to people, has now made its way into the hobby.
Yeah.
More prevalent. I think I saw a sales post for it recently, and I'm just
Wow.
like, that's pretty interesting. That
Yeah.
because before I remember I was a bit offended. So some guy I was interested in everything. Well, I wasn't super interested, but just the fact that he said no, he doesn't trust me to get them, that piqued my interest even more.
Of course.
and,
Of
I'm
course.
just, and I'm just like, but like he get valid concerns. He's like, this goes back to the like breeding, I guess, and selling scorpions. And he's like, I'm already a bit hesitant selling you these scorpions. I don't know you. And selling like a venomous animal to someone, you kind of feel
Sure.
some responsibility and everything. And I'm like,
Absolutely.
oh, what's this one? And he's like, no, you don't get that one. And I'm just like,
Uh,
because he ended up sending me a video. I'll try to dig it up. They had the most interesting. I say interesting, but it's like a tweaking response to just being like if you breathe on a little bit, these are like grown adults acting like their baby Parabuthus, baby Lyris, and everything, just spazzing around everywhere.
wow.
But they're but but yeah, I forgot where I was going to go with that. But they're super interesting. Um, maybe one day I'll get into them, but they're from like a really arid area. I think someone had mentioned before when I first heard about them that it's really kind of cool that their venom is more has seems to have more of effect on like primates and everything when there's no primates in that
Yeah.
area. So it's like, why do they have that kind of specific venom? I need to look into it more. I think there's been another paper on them to like fact check some of the things that I was told. But yeah, I don't know. It's just like that's another fascinating outlet.
Yeah. It's very cool, man. Very cool. But yeah, I think how you keep your animals is one thing, but how you maintain them is something else. And I feel like you can keep a scorpion happy in a deli cup with a paper towel and a bottle cap and call it a day. Is it right? Is it proper? No. But in theory, it could survive and be perfectly fine. And it's still a bug at the end of the day. All it wants to do is eat, poop, and breed. But how you transport that animal, how you move that animal, how you clean that animal's enclosure, that is something totally different. And I really feel like having your own procedure and protocols is paramount and sticking to them. I can't tell you how many times I want to reach in and grab the piece of cork bark out with my hand, and you don't know if it's on the other side, upside down.
Right.
You know, I mean, I don't think I've ever actually done it, but I've thought about it. You know what I mean? Like I've thought about picking the thing up, picking the piece of cork bark up and going, where's the scorpion? And then I look and it's on my hand. Like that's never happened to me, but I've envisioned it. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
those messed up visions is what keeps me using hemostats and tweezers, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So
That
yeah.
Well, just thinking about, I mean, similar to some of the venomous species and snakes that we, you know, there's no anti-venom for, or something that's
Yeah.
incredibly hard to source. Like, I'd feel pretty dumb if I managed to get nailed by Alirus or Andronctonus and then have to go to the hospital and then be like, what do you want us to do?
Yeah.
mhm.
Like, what are
Yeah.
we who are you gonna call?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, how about this? I'll tell this story. I don't think I've ever told this story on air before. A couple of my friends know that it has happened, but again, this is not a badge of honor, but I made a almost fatal mistake with an androgynous bicolor. I went to the shop and I met my friend, and we're in the shop, and he's like, "Hey man, I got more bicolors. You want one?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And he hands me the deli cup, and it's a very small deli. And this is maybe, oh gosh, fourth or fifth instar. So the body of the scorpion is smaller than your pinky nail. Okay.
okay.
And I open the deli cup lid. I'm holding the deli cup in my hand. I open the lid, and there's like a piece of egg carton in there, you know, like you have with your crickets
Yeah.
or your eggs in your fridge. And I lift up the egg carton with my fingers because I know it's very tiny, and I'm very slow, and I turn it over, assuming that it's going to be on the underside of the egg carton, right? And I know that it's not going to lash out irrationally, but God forbid it does. I can just let go, and it's going to fall in the deli cup that I'm holding. Well, I take the egg carton out, and I see it sitting there, and it looks like it's dead. It just doesn't look good. And I touch it with the egg carton and nothing happens. And I was like, oh, this is stupid. And I put the egg carton down and I kind of slough the sand with my middle finger of my right hand. And that thing rocks its tail back and stings me right in the cuticle. And I immediately pulled my hand out of the deli cup, and I felt the pinprick of the stinger. And I look at my hand, and there's nothing there. And I look, and the thing is doing breakdancing inside the deli cup, just freaking out, grabbing at things, stinging at things, just going bananas in the deli cup. So I put the deli cup down, I put the lid on it, and then I looked at my finger, and I started to squeeze my finger to see if any blood would come out. And a single drop of blood came out, and the hammer fell. You know, you get that adrenaline, that, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, what the hell did I just do? Why did I know better? Like, this is not my first rodeo. Why did I do this? I just got stung by the third or fourth most dangerous scorpion there is. And I waited a second, and I said, you know what? I got to go to the hospital. Like, this is horrible. This is stupid. I need to go to the hospital because luckily Venom One in Miami, which is 20-30 minutes away, they have multiple different North African polyvalent scorpion antivenom. I was like, all right, you know what? They do. I was like, let me just go to the hospital. And I said, you know what? Let's see what happens, which again is never a good idea because I had no pain. I had no pain. It was just that one little drop of blood. So I wipe the drop of blood away and I start to, move my fingers. I want to make sure that obviously I'm going to spread that venom. But at this point, I'm like, you know what? The animal is so small and it is such a minute amount of venom. I mean, I don't even know if it's like, how do I phrase this? It's smaller than smaller than a droplet, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And my fingernail went numb and the tip of my finger went numb. So I started to squeeze my finger more and figure maybe it's like it's in the tip of my finger and I can maybe
Right.
squeeze some of it out of that hole where the blood came. And I squeezed and no droplet came out, nothing came out. I was just squeezing my finger and it didn't hurt. It was just numb. And I sat there and I told my buddy who was with me, I was like, look, man, hospital's like 10 minutes away. I was like, let's just give it a minute. It's a really, really small scorpion. I'm probably going to be all right. But if I start to look funny or whatever, there's an EpiPen in my backpack. Let's rock and roll. And after about 20 minutes, everything went away. It was perfectly fine. And I really do feel like that was one of the times where I didn't get both serums. You know what I'm saying? I felt like it was a warning stab or a warning shot. I don't feel like I feel like if I had gotten both binary parts of the serum, it would have been atrocious. Even though the thing is literally the size of my pinky nail.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I got very, very lucky, and I don't tell people that story because it's not a badge of honor. And it was complete stupidity. And here's the thing: I wasn't even touching the scorpion. I was touching the sand, trying to like throw sand on him to see if he would move. I should have did that with the egg carton. I should have done that with hemostats. So it just goes to show you that not even touching the bug. What's that?
Paintbrushes go a long way.
A paintbrush go a long way. Yeah. Q-tips go a long way. Just make sure they're long enough.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely caught myself getting complacent, especially with snakes. It's one thing I would imagine. I've never kept venomous snakes, but you could. There's only so many venomous snakes you could keep in a room compared to you could have like in a small area hundreds of scorpions.
Exactly.
And there's been some days where it's like you're keeping a lot of like spiders, scorpions. You're like, all right, I want to get this feeding. I want this cage maintenance done with. I want to go as like try to get this quickly as you can. But then you always have to sometimes like step back and catch yourself. Like, no, I can't be complacent. I need to do this, or like let me bring out my second like that secondary container, or like, oh, I forgot that there was like I had like 10 more on the side over there, and I already like wiped down and put away my I put away that the second enclosure, and I'm just like, you know what, maybe I should just like pop it, do it on there, because I kept them all. I'll send you photos of it. It's really janky, kind of like the Home Depot like wire mesh shelving. I just kept like each level was like, oh, one was like the African inverts, from more arid, and then each shelf would be different, and it was just like, okay, I'm like, I forgot one on one side, but no, it's like those little things. It's like it's sometimes like we all forget at times and everything, and that doesn't yeah,
it doesn't make it okay to do it.
Yeah, it doesn't make it okay to do it. It's just yeah.
And we all have those fleeting moments, and I tell people it's the exact same thing with venomous snakes. If you start to do your maintenance and you're tired, don't do it.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? If you're getting frustrated, this is actually a really huge deal with venomous snakes that people don't realize. There are going to be times with venomous keeping that you get frustrated. The snake is uncooperative, it is wrapped itself around the decor, or it won't ride the hook or whatever, and you get frustrated. You can't keep going. You have to stop. You have to come back another time. You have to come back another day. And that's what's going to keep you safe and alive, because the more frustrated you get, the harder it's going to be, and the more chance of accident or risk is present. That's just it. And the same thing goes for the bugs. If you're not feeling it, if you've got 20 scorpion containers and you're 3 or 4 of them in, and you're like, man, I just don't want to do this right now. Don't do it. They're scorpions. They'll be okay till tomorrow or the next day.
Yeah,
At least
definitely.
that's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather like coming back home after work being dead exhausted and everything. I'd rather wait until my day off, or wait until I have a morning free available, and just to do that. I mean, like, even now, I mean, like, uh, I only keep non-venomous snakes, constrictors, but even now I have like certain rules set in place. Like I don't mind getting bit. I don't enjoy it, so I try to minimize that
Yeah,
risk. So
no one does.
yeah, so like I do all my cage maintenance in the mornings, evening, mornings, afternoons, into the evening. But after like lights are out, like around 7 p.m., I don't go in the enclosure
Yeah,
at
and
all.
that's a great point. I always tell people with venomous, you at least in the Western world, do not start venomous maintenance after 10 p.m. unless you, how do I phrase this? Unless you're a midnight shift person and you start your day at 10 p.m. and you sleep all day, don't, if you're a normal 9 to 5 diurnal human, as we say, uh, don't start venomous after 10 p.m. Now, that's when accidents happen. You're fatigued from the day, it's late, you're not thinking clearly, you've got other things in your mind, you're getting ready for bed, and at the same time, God forbid something happens, the hospital staff is also doing the exact same thing. It is not fully manned, it is not fully staffed, excuse me, and you have a higher risk of issues happening. Now, my rule is if I start venomous at say 8 p.m. and I work through 10 p.m., I'm okay with that. But come midnight, no, we shut down. Nothing
Yeah.
after midnight in that regard. But I'll never go up there at 11 and start. Like that just
You've
won't happen.
also mentioned too, like there's really nothing so important that if you're tired that it can't wait until the next day.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
barring like a medical emergency, but even then,
Right. Right.
depending on what we're talking about, like what can you really do at that point
I
anyways?
mean, I've heard a bump in the night and been like, what the hell was that? And I go in the snake room and I had cobras that I put together and they're duking it out and I had to separate them.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you better believe I'm going to take a second and focus on what's going on and make sure that the door is closed, make sure that the lights are on, make sure my hooks are strategically placed, make sure I'm wearing freaking shoes, make sure I don't have any jewelry on my fingers or my wrists or whatever. If I have my watch off. Let's say I fell asleep with my watch on. That's got to come off. Things like that need to take place before you rush in there and separate those two snakes. Because if you caught them fighting mid-fight, ain't nothing you could do now. The venom's already flowing, the bites have already happened. Yes, you want to separate them. Yes, you want to contain the situation, but you can't rush into the burning building. You got to look and see what's happening with the fire first, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I had the kind of the same thing. So when I was in high school, me and a buddy, we had larger constrictors, like reticulated python, the wild caught ones that everyone did back in the day.
Oh yeah,
And we had a rule. Sometimes we'd go in there at night, but someone always had to be within earshot at the very least, or in the
sure.
room. We had a rule. It's like if it's anything more than 10 feet,
Yeah.
Yeah,
you
Yeah.
want someone in the room.
yeah,
Even if it's up to 10 feet, you still want someone in the place itself. But
Within
yeah,
earshot.
yeah, definitely. I
Yeah.
did not want to. Yeah, I mean, I remember telling someone this at Tinley back then, and they kind of laughed at me and everything. They're like, "No, just handle it." I'm like, "No, man." I'm just like, I love the snake. I have complete admiration for it, but I've seen what it does to pre-killed rodents, and
yeah.
and that's one thing. And plus, like again, you 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 don't want to be that guy that takes away from the hobby. Um,
Of
just
course.
for one mistake, just be like, "Oh, it tipped over its water bowl," which don't get me wrong, that always annoyed the hell out of me.
Yeah,
Whenever a snake or even like a transfer or anything, the moment I like will put it in and everything would be done, or I'd come back another hour, and part of the enclosure is all wet, and it's like, come on, and it's like the urge, like I'm like, you know what? One, this is a wild card tick. Two, she already hates me, and there's no point in putting me at risk, or even at the what's even not the worst thing that could happen, but just like getting bit from her is not going to be fun.
right,
And
right.
I was one of those dudes that had like I had my friend's brother, because I was not 21 then, so I had my friend's brother buy me a shooter of vodka to put inside their mouth if they bite, because
Yeah,
um we didn't have a sink nearby, and I kept like I don't know if people still do this Listerine,
yeah. Oh yeah.
like at a bunch to also use. I'm just like, if anything bites me, the entire thing's gonna go on, gonna
Yeah,
go on there.
sure.
But yeah, but yeah, forgot where we were going with this.
Well, no, I think you're on the right track. I think the beauty of everything you just said is all of that is preventable with scorpions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? All of it.
Well,
Because
think about it too. There's
yeah.
really nothing maintenance wise with a scorpion that you have to stop everything and take care of it.
Exactly. Yeah, and just the odds of you fumbling something late at night, you forget to put the container within another container, and now all of a sudden you've got a scorpion on the floor, and it goes behind the bookshelf or whatever. Now you got a real problem, especially if it's in the Boothidii genus, excuse me.
Yeah, and God forbid it's like a Titius or like
Yeah.
one of the more potent centroides. Like with the other ones, it's like it's a little bit less. But but the smaller guys, especially the arboreal ones, the bark scorpions, they're amazing at shoving themselves into places you can't
Oh
reach.
yeah.
And I don't know about you guys, but that would keep me up at night because
Oh, for sure.
because I kept a lot of my animals in the room that I sleep, and
Yeah.
so I just like, all right, well, I'm gonna keep like my eyes open for it until I could like locate them
Keep
themselves.
that black light on hand.
Keep that black light on hand. That's it, man. Yeah.
Even with like harmless like tarantulas and everything, I had an avicularia sling. Don't laugh at me. I'd want like get out and everything, and I still was like, oh crap. I'm like, I need to find it. I can't sleep. I can't sleep well because I was still getting over my arachnophobia. But like even that kept me up, so I can't imagine what it would be like for a
For
scorpion
sure.
of sorts.
For sure. And just going back to like things what not to do. We talked about the bottle cap. I keep going back to the bottle cap. You don't want to put the bottle cap in with the tweezers first and then add your water. You want to fill the bottle cap with water, then use your tweezers to pick up the bottle cap and put the bottle cap into the container. Because I can't tell you how many times I've tried to been lazy or slick and like pour a bottle of water in, and all of a sudden now you just soak the entire deli cup in water because you got
That's why I use my hand pump sprayer and just adjust
give
the
a little
nozzle
squirt.
so that it's
Yeah.
a jet and fill it up with that.
Yeah, that's actually really smart. And at the same time, some of that squirt is going to go on the sides of the container or on the cork pieces or whatever, and it's going to add just enough humidity, and maybe even that invert is going to drink the dew off of that cork bark. Who knows?
Yeah, and then that actually kind of reminds me of like one other thing. I know this is more of an issue with tarantulas and true spiders. It's like be cognizant of like the circulation, the airflows you're putting into the
Oh, very much
enclosures.
so.
A lot of people don't realize that if a tarantula's carapace can get through a hole, it's going to try to get its entire body out, and it very well could. I with my scorpions, I used a safety pin to
Yeah.
make holes. And yes, sometimes it sucked, especially with the larger ones, because larger enclosures, because you have to make multiple, like I say multiple, but it was like hundreds of holes and everything. But yeah, that's one of the things I did not want to take a chance on. It was like, God forbid that they were able to climb on the side of the enclosure, and I lifted it wrong. They were able to get their stinger through there. That's not one thing that I've wanted to happen. And I have had with tarantulas, Lasiodora species, so the salmon pink bird eater,
Yeah.
and then like Acanthoscuria as well as Pamphobedius. You would hear some like clacking during the night and wake up. They would have their fangs through some of the ventilation holes. Then these are some large, like 5+ inch spiders doing that. And I'm like, I mean, like, I know you're not harmful, but that's fucking terrifying.
Have you seen one rip open a deli hole?
I've seen one break part of a critter keeper like that mesh.
Oh,
I mean, not
really?
the mesh, like the
Plastic
ones.
screen on top. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen one break a little hinge off, but I've also seen them when they were freshly molted. So some of those critter keepers, they would like stick their fangs through, break off fangs
Oh, geez.
as well. So I've seen both sides to it. That's why I was always terrified of keeping
Yeah.
them critter keepers. But I have not in the deli cup or like a plastic tub. I have not seen them do that. I think I may have heard of that happening because, and when you tell newer keepers this, they don't believe you. They're like, "Oh,
No.
it's a tarantula.
No.
It's not
Yeah.
strong enough." I'm like, "No, I mean, like
I've seen it.
yeah, I mean, like, yeah, that must have been impressive to even see.
Yeah, it's not the deli cups that like the hard dense polyurethane ones we use for like keeping a lot of inverts in, but those ones we talked about earlier, like the ones you get blueberries and strawberries in.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, man. Big bird eater just tearing through it and just a big hole where they work their fangs and just keep pulling the plastic out. Oh yeah, right through it.
Yeah, and and you have to like know that like a lot of these like especially phosphorial ones, they're digging all these intricate tunnels
Sure.
and everything, especially through like various like hardness of like the soil, whatever. So it's yeah, it's I don't discount scorpions in that like manner too. I kind of carry over practices from all kind of inverts, except for fucking centipedes because they're a whole different other beast, and I
Oh
am
yeah, we didn't even
absolutely
talk about
terrified
them
of them.
tonight.
Yeah, I did actually want to hit on them and your experience with them because like I have kept them for a short time, but it was like not. I don't know. I mean, I feel like some of the rules go out the door with them because I've seen videos of them like climbing up your tweezers in an instant
Oh
and
yeah. Oh
everything.
yeah.
So
My centipede experience was very short lived. I kept them for about maybe a year or two. I was extremely neurotic, and the so my basic procedure was deli cup inside of a giant Rubbermaid tub. I had the lid of that tub handy at the ready in case it got out. I was just going to put the lid on real quick, let it calm down, see what's going to happen, see if it goes back into its own container on its own, because there's a high probability that it might do that. Um, and then at the same time, I would put that larger container in the bathtub. I'd plug the drain of the bathtub, and now I've got a container within another container. I had two sets of hemostats, ones that I'd be using as a primary, and another set in case the centipede started to come up the tool. I could abandon the tool, sacrifice that tool, have another set of hemostats at the ready, much like we do with venomous snakes. And then this is going to sound messed up, and people are going to yell at me for this, but the piece de resistance was a giant can of Raid next to me. Because if it, for whatever reason, got out of that bathtub, even if the Raid didn't kill it, I know it would slow it down and choke it up enough that I could grab it with the hemostats and put it back in its container or something. Because to me, having a Chinese tiger leg loose in the bathroom is not an option. That just ain't happening. So
yeah, I mean,
sorry for all the invert people who think I'm a sick freak. And I will say this: in all those 2 years or longer that I did keep centipedes, I never once opened that can. So there you go.
I mean, it's always good to have backup plans. I mean, like regardless, especially if you're living in an apartment, you're living
Oh
with
yeah,
other people and everything. You're going to get um yeah, it's just it's just not safe.
yeah, yeah.
It's good to always have like multiple kind of plans. I mean, like with me, even so, I used to grow mushrooms, the culinary kind, um, and I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with growing them at all, but you need things to be completely sterile. So we had like the clean air boxes, kind of like I made one and everything, and I was like thinking that I'm just like what if I use this to rehouse things? But then like, I
Yeah.
quickly did away with it just because the mobility with the gloves on inside
Sure,
that
sure.
box isn't the
Mhm.
greatest. And I'm just like, you know what? It's not worth it. And plus, what the hell am I going to do if it gets out and like, because you make holes in the box, then you put your hands into like, then you attach these gloves into there. So your skin's not exposed in there, but, you, but you're like, you putting your hands in the gloves to get
Right.
in there. And I remember thinking, I'm like, no, I mean, like, this is probably like kind of dumb, whatever, or just like something's going to go wrong. And then I think the very next day, I saw someone post about they were rehousing their OBT. So, and the sling got out and hid right in the crevice of one of the gloves on the side, and they weren't able to try to get it out for like, it took them the longest time.
Wow.
So and so it's just like, all right, well, I'm like knowing my luck that would happen to me, and
Yeah,
then
Yeah.
right.
I'm like, you know what? That's a closure. That's the spider's enclosure now. It's
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, centipedes. I've learned after some definitive trial and error that they are not for me. So
yes, I could admire them for in photos and everything. I don't
yeah,
mind.
absolutely. They're
It's like
amazing animals. It's just not for me at home.
yeah, like seeing how fast they are, seeing them take down prey, as well as like the other thing, the big thing. I'm not well versed with centipedes at all, but the matrophagy that happens when some species, and then how some species are like, I say this, and I own snakes that are expensive, but $350 all the way up to $800 for a centipede that's wild caught, like gigantea,
Right, right.
and everything. You don't know how old they are. You don't know
Of
how long
course.
they have left and everything. And um, that's what I like. I don't know. Just like again, I'm being a complete hypocrite because I'm looking at because you look at like I don't know like a green tree python, which I don't have. I would like, but that's like $1,500. Like oh, that's or like $1,200 on sale or $1,000. Like, oh, that's not too bad. But then you look at like a $200 spiderling, and it's like,
Yeah,
that's
and I feel like
expensive.
there's also a disconnect there at some point where the snake that you know you're going to have and care for years, if not decades to come, is a lot different than a bug that is has a high probability of not surviving. That's why mom has 500 babies or whatever. And at the same time, if it's if it's a spider and it's a male, now it's even
Yeah,
shorter lifespan. Like you have to factor those things in, and it's kind of
Yeah.
relative to a certain extent.
yeah, definitely. And that kind of like a little bit of a side topic that you brought up. It's that I think there was a recent discussion. It's like, yeah, we're growing on all these like spiderlings in sacks that could have, depending on the species, could have as little as like 30. I know a friend of mine. He's actually down in Gainesville. Um, he was one of the first people, if not the first person to breed Xenestus species blue. I think it's a Colombian blue bloom or something. Um, and I think that sack had like 20 spiderlings,
Oh wow.
but they were giant.
Yeah.
Whereas you have like Lasiodora paraibana, the salmon pink bird eater. There's a reason why people are giving it out for freebies because they have like hundreds of them,
Right.
Yeah.
and it's just
Yeah.
like we're in captivity. I say like quote unquote we're growing out all of them or giving the ones, but like um, so you wonder what kind of like defects are kind of like
Sure.
being propagated. I say that like we're growing out all of them, but it's like there's sometimes you'll see like for like Agacephalus, Jundai and everything. We had multiple sacks of them at one point in time. It's like where are all the females or
Right.
where like what happened because like unfortunately I don't think a lot of people when they get out of the tarantula hobby if they can't sell them I don't think they necessarily try to rehome them, which is why
Yeah.
we don't see a lot of the more uncommon species. But yeah,
Hmm.
it's interesting.
For sure. For sure. I think that also goes back to why I really love scorpions so much, and that's the maternal instinct of the animal, the courtship of copulation, and like so I bred Babicarus jacksoni a couple times, and I have photos. I gotta find them. I'll send them to you of mom and dad like canoodling post coitus, if you will, and like just the communal aspect of it, and then mom being just a wonderful mother, and like mom's got 20 babies on her back. I give mom a large cricket that I squish the head of. She sits there and starts to palpate it with the chelicerae and then slowly start to bring gooey pieces up to her back and give them to the babies. Like, how amazing is that? And then it's just awesome. And I feel like you don't get that with a lot of other inverts,
Yeah,
or if not any.
and that definitely brings more of a like I hate to say it, kind of like a human aspect
Oh,
to
of course. Yeah.
that, and that I really feel like a lot of people who discount bugs or inverts as a whole should we really be seeing that? I think that would like change a lot of minds, but of course you're
Sure.
gonna have people say they're not. Some people will even say they're not animals,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but but kind of a funny point. Yeah, the whole like canoodling after coitus or like the whole dance thing and everything. I'm like relationship goals.
Yeah. Right.
Like,
Exactly. Exactly. Oh man. And like picking the perfect rock to give them and then like giving them options, and then they pick their perfect rock. Like that's just so cute, man. I love it.
yeah, it's like these animals are a lot have a lot more depth than than
Yeah.
what we think of. Though some people are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that curly hair I got is funny because she was originally digging, like I had a piece of cork bark in there, right? That's like long, and she was originally digging out the front, going with the grain of the cork bark in the opening. And now she's decided within the last couple days or nights that she's just going to completely blow out one side of it and use that as where she enters and exits that cork bark rather than the actual end of it. And that spider's just goofy, man.
Yeah, I've done like so. So what I used to do with like some of my fossorial species, especially in like clear tubs, when I'd like fill it up with like substrate, I'd start a starter burrow on the side so
Mhm.
I can see them, but I would also cover that with like some black construction paper to like block out all the lights, and it would be going so well till one day they decided like nah, and they would go and do it in the middle of the enclosure
Yeah.
so I can't see them, and I'd be like you motherfucker, but
They know
yeah, I
exactly
mean like.
what they're doing.
Yeah, it's just like I don't know. I was always like, "Oh, I wanna see." It's like I'm one of those people who are like, if I drop like a roach or something inside there, I wanna know that the tarantula got it. Um, and, yeah, just having that, like, extra peek into there, into the burrow was always nice, and plus, like, in the beginning, it was a lot of trial and error with the substrate and everything, and I'm like, is there fungus growing down there? Is there like mold or something? Just like having knowing that peace of mind, or like, is the damn spider still alive over there? Am I
Right.
just throwing crickets into a hole that spiders have been deceased for months now? And I just never, like, it's not easy digging them up. So,
Yeah. It's goofy to see just the different personalities and stuff, and even between species on a sort of a broader scale, with different scorpions, like the bicolor versus the quinquestriatus, those are
mhm,
they're similar, but they're kind of not. Like they both have their idiosyncrasies and um, things to come to expect. Things like I think we've talked about Pacillifaria and sort of how the different species definitely have sort of different vibes to
mhm,
them than and then you have the individual level, but like the Regalis that I have in comparison to the Metallica, like at the same size, like that Metallica is out and about all the time. The Regalis, like I'll see legs, and that's how I know that we're hungry.
mhm,
Um, but unless I go in there, an hour after lights out, like the likelihood of me seeing that Regalis during the day is pretty slim.
mhm.
But that Metallica, dude, that Metallica's out all the time. That Metallica doesn't care, which is awesome because that's the one species I definitely would like to see all the time when I walk in.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
awesome. That's very cool.
So, Phil, I'm kind of curious. Are we going to be seeing more inverts in your collection in the future?
So I I I was about to take home a golden Chaco yesterday
About to? Why didn't you?
because I knew it would start. I knew it would make waves with my significant other.
Paul Cripes.
Yeah, pole gripes, dude, gorgeous. Like that big, like perfect everything. Just you know it was going to be a dinner plate size spider. You know what I'm saying? Like you could just see it when they're that size, like that good 2-inch size, and you know that eventually it's going to be bigger than your face and it's going to be adorable. I was going to do it, and I said, you know what? It's most likely going to make waves with my fiance because she's not into spiders. I said, you know what? I will probably not do any spiders for the foreseeable future. But scorpions, I think I'm going to probably grab a couple more. I want to get back into some of the more eclectic, harmless stuff.
Mhm,
We were talking about this last night. Opisthothalamus, the South African burrowing species.
mhm,
There's like 20 species that are now a thing that weren't a thing back when. So I'd like to get maybe one or two of those. I'd also like to try and get Heterogeneous again. Probably I had Pauciodens and Troglodytes. I really like the Pauciodens, just the color and everything. But the one I've always wanted was bicolor,
mhm.
a heterogeneous bicolor, just bright sandy golden yellow with jet black mixed in, just a gorgeous looking scorpion, totally harmless, great size, something that I could pick up and hold and not be afraid for my life. um and it kind of goes into my African deserty
Yeah,
rocky, fits the vibe. So I'm gonna keep my ears or keep my eyes peeled for that, I should say. And see what else. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe I'll
you
get some
should.
more.
If you once you start delving into more of the booth today, on the less harmful side of the spectrum, you should look into Europlectus, like
I I
Chubbai and Fisher
I
Eye.
I love them. They are absolutely. I had what did I have? Hold on. I had a Europlectus. I had one, and it was like crazy army digital camo.
Okay,
You know what I'm talking about?
I think so. Right now, I'm just picturing is it Fisher Eye the one with the orange appendages? Let me. I need to.
What the heck was this thing?
You need these guys too, Justin.
You know what? I'm confusing with Lycus. I had Lycus Asper,
Okay.
and that's that. I'm confusing with that. Sorry. Yeah. And the Europlectis is that's not Australian, right? No, what is that?
I believe it's African.
Is it African? I can't remember. I'm so behind on my bug tax. It's horrible.
It's their Fisher Eye is found in Ethiopia and Somalia
Okay.
in grassland areas.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I the Lycus I think I had was I want to say Tanzania, I think.
okay.
It may have come in on a Kenyan shipment. I don't remember. That was a long time ago, man. Crap. But yeah, no, I definitely want to get some more arid species or some more grassland species, and go from there. I really want to try and find that heterogeneous bicolor. I feel like just nobody
I
does
don't see
them.
that genus really at all anymore.
I
Yeah.
know. I think they're just kind of
Are they
dried
like
up.
are are there any restrictions placed on them for import?
No, well,
Or
it's very hard to get stuff out of South Africa or Namibia, but a lot of Mozambique still exports a ton of stuff that is also found in Swaziland and Limpopo and what is northern Transvaal, like that whole region. So same species, just in Mozambique. You know,
I used to see species Limpopo. I don't know if it was just a completely undescribed one, or if there was it was a different color variant. They weren't sure what it was. Have you seen?
no, I have not. And when I type in on Google heterogeneous bicolor, I guess there's another one. There's a subspecies called alter. Heterogeneous bicolor alter. I don't remember that. And these pictures are not attractive at all. What are these pictures?
They're going to say the complete opposite.
No, I feel like Google got the ugliest ones. Man, I do not remember them being this drab. Interesting. I'll have to find a good representation and go from there. I mean, I guess the best representation would be iNaturalist, right? You'd think, but yeah, we'll see what happens. See what it holds. You don't have any Transvalicus still, do you?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I unfortunately when I started moving around for my last tech position, because I had to hop around working as a wildlife biologist, which was great, but at the same time, it's like I couldn't keep many animals,
Yeah.
especially with the more toxic species. I decided to get rid of them. I gave them all to basically one person bought out my entire um, collection, which was nice. And I think he still works with them. I was definitely going to try to reach out to him again
Cool.
and to be like, hey, it would be cool to have some like progeny of the ones that I
Yeah.
like sold to you. He seemed really enthusiastic about that, and that's something you don't always see with people who keep scorpions. I mean, usually a lot of people do keep scorpions. They have tarantulas, and it's just a few scorpions.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of people in the hobby are stepping down. I could add you to some Facebook groups like this, I think it's called the Scorpion Hobby. That's still like a wealth of information. You have like people who wrote the book. I forgot his name. He wrote this amazing scorpion book. But I'll get it. I'll get the name of it. And I'll send you guys. But it's like it's a wealth of information, and it's really nice seeing people trying to get into it.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah, I figure I could probably get away with realistically if I did, because I don't want to set up actual vivariums because I feel like it's a lot of space for a bug, in my personal opinion. But an 18 quart tub, I can set that up really nice and give it lots of airflow and have good space, and the animal won't be cramped per se. And I could probably get away with maybe 3 or 4 of those tubs right now, just the way that I have the room laid out. Like I have
Mhm.
space for that.
Oh,
So if I can find the right bugs, I'll probably do that. Um, and they'll most likely be sub-Saharan Africa if I really can get. I mean, I'd love to get more Mauritanias again. Those things were freaking amazing. I'd love to get the Judaica, like I talked about earlier. Those
mhm.
things are gorgeous. Um, but yeah, I'm really going to try and find that heterogeneous bicolor. Dude, I just remember it being just a black body with black pincers and yellow legs with a yellow tail and a black stinger, just looking cool, man. You know?
Yeah, definitely. And there's also like pros to keeping scorpions in smaller. I mean, an adequate size with smaller enclosures. With them, I was a bit more wary about not being able to find them and doing cage maintenance with like larger enclosure that can get tricky
Yeah,
as well and everything. So just like I know they're good with a certain amount of space, and if I could work around that too, then that's great. But I don't want to give them too big of a space otherwise. Yeah.
yeah, for sure, for sure. So but that'll be the not so distant future, I'll say.
I'll definitely keep my eyes out for those species.
Yeah. And then the 2 guys that we've been looking at on Instagram, those 2 guys back and forth, man, incredible. The one guy in Germany, the other guy at stateside, dude, some of those bugs are amazing, man. And like the
Yeah.
European prices are amazing.
Yeah, I know. That's why we're still so reliant on. I'm sure with Scorpion still, but like with the with the transfer side of the hobby, we're still more reliant on a lot of the imports from Germany, imports from the UK and everything. I'm not sure if it's mainly. I mean, if it's seen in Scorpion hobby as in the Scorpion hobby as much as with tarantulas, but there's still like with tarantula. I think I hit on this before. There's a lot of gatekeeping with
Yeah.
how to breed them and everything. It's like, oh, you have to drop the temps now. Um, you have to like flood the enclosure and everything. But now with like with how iNaturalist, for example, is becoming more used, it's becoming easier just to be like, hey, where does this, for example, where does Pamphipedius found? Is it found on the mountainsides where it's cooler, or is it found in like the lowlands where it's more wet and humid? And then you can look up temperature, climate data, and everything, and go on from there. So yeah, we're moving into a much more
Open
what's the word?
source.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
like point in time where we should hopefully it would be amazing. It would be amazing, like if the hobby could be self-sufficient in the species that we have now. Um, I feel like that would be amazing.
No, I agree fully, man. I agree. I see a lot of cool things in the future as long as people like the 2 of you keep being enthusiastic and keep wanting to know more and learn more, and that's just the way it's got to go, and we'll keep blossoming the way we have been. And it's just like the reptile hobby where you have similar things from 15, 20 years ago, but you also have a ton of new things. You have new species that were called something else back then, and then you have new species that we've never seen before.
Mhm.
People
Mhm.
didn't know that this particular one came out of Oman or Uganda or whatever. Nobody knew it existed, and they're like, oh yeah, this whole village has them. They're everywhere. So let's grab a couple, we'll bring them back, and we'll make more. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it makes me excited, especially to even see them in the wild, like going quote unquote spidering and everything is still enjoyable. You
Oh,
get to
for
go
sure.
herping at the same time.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, man, it's
Well,
gonna be
was there
awesome.
anything else?
I mean, I'll just say this: use a container within a container, and use tools. Don't use your hands. That's it. And don't do it after
Pay
10
attention to
p.m.
where your fingers go.
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Don't slough sand with
Pretty
your
simple.
finger. So,
All right. Well, this was episode 4. Sir, do you have anything else?
Uh, no. Thanks, Phil, for hopping on and on such short notice. I really liked hearing your take on it, especially with your experience with the venomous keeping for snakes. As someone who hasn't kept venomous snakes, it's great to hear that I'm doing things similar to how how someone has experienced as you're doing them, and how you still view and treat them with respect, and don't kind of brush them off to the side because they are inverts. It's nice to see that other people are giving them like a healthy amount of respect too. So that's really great.
I appreciate that. And I really thank both of you guys for having me on. I love that you guys came up with this idea, and I love this podcast, and I think it's going to go places, man. I'm excited to see what the future holds.
Thanks, man.
Thank you. Well, this episode is brought to you by fullbeastapparel.com. Give it a follow, Facebook, Instagram. Use the code THN at checkout. Get 15% off your order. It's the exclusive promo code just for you. I've been adding some stuff as of late, so go check that out. I guess we technically have a sponsorship slot open for this. If anybody that's in a invert relevant part of the industry has any interest there, please shoot us a message. Other than that, more to come. We'll be back for Snakes and Stogies on Monday. There's not a holiday or anything, right?
No, and David's going to join us.
Yes, that's right. That'll be good. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, man, for sure. He's excited to smoke a cigar.
Is he really?
Yeah, he got into cigars because of, I don't want to say because of us, but maybe for the past year or so. So he's like, oh man, I can't wait. I got some more sticks I want to smoke on air. I'm like, all right, let's do it.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for my first real cigar experience at Daytona with you guys.
You don't have to wait a year, bro. You go buy one tomorrow.
I'm still traumatized. I'm like, I say real because like the one time I did, I inhaled it like a hookah.
Oh God!
I thought I was gonna die.
Right to jail.
Straight to the freaking ventilator.
Yeah.
Good Lord. All right. Well, we will see everybody later. Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Hoden Toda Saleh.